Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English story. In the heart of a bustling city, surrounded by noise and constant movement, lived a man named Theo. He was a well-known painter, celebrated for his vibrant landscapes and captivating portraits. But despite his success in the art world, Theo couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that seemed to follow him. No matter how many accolades he received or how much recognition he gained, he had spent years chasing external achievements, hoping that fame, wealth, and admiration would bring him happiness, but they never quite did. One day, after a particularly frustrating day in the studio, where nothing seemed to go right, Theo found himself sitting in the quiet of his small apartment, looking at the half-finished painting on his easel. His mind wandered to the question that had been troubling him for some time. What is the true meaning of happiness? He had everything he could possibly want in terms of material, wealth, and recognition. Yet, there was an emptiness within him that no amount of success could fill. Theo decided to take a break from his art and reflect on what he had been missing. He began reading books, attending workshops, and speaking with people from all walks of life. He discovered that true happiness wasn't about external achievements, it was about something much deeper. Happiness, he learned, was an art, a practice that came from within. One of the first things Theo realized was that happiness was something to be chased. It wasn't a destination or a prize waiting to be earned. It was something that could only be cultivated from within. He learned that happiness was a result of his own thoughts, actions, and mindset. As Theo spent more time reflecting on these ideas, he began to recognize how much he had been focusing on the wrong things. Instead of appreciating the beauty around him, he had been preoccupied with goals that were constantly out of reach. The more he chased fame, fortune, and recognition, the further he felt from true fulfillment. But now, with his new understanding, he knew that happiness was not just about what you had, but how you felt about what you had. Theo's journey toward understanding the art of happiness was not an easy one. It required him to look within and confront the feelings of dissatisfaction he had been avoiding for years. But he was determined to learn. One of the first changes Theo made was in his daily routine. He began waking up early in the morning, before the chaos of the day began, and taking time for himself. Instead of rushing through his breakfast or diving straight into his work, he started each morning with a moment of gratitude. He'd sit in his kitchen with a cup of tea, staring out the window at the rising sun, and reflect on all the things in his life that he was grateful for: high health, his ability to create, the love of his family, and the beauty of nature. This simple practice of gratitude shifted his mindset. Theo found that when he focused on what he had, rather than what he lacked, he felt a deeper sense of contentment. Theo also realized that in order to cultivate happiness, he needed to let go of his constant desire for approval. For years, he had painted to please others, to earn praise and admiration. His art had become a tool for validation. But now, he knew he had to shift his focus back to the joy of creating for its own sake. Theo began painting for himself, pouring his heart and soul into his work. He stopped worrying about what others would think of his paintings. Instead, he embraced the process, allowing himself to experiment and express his emotions freely on the canvas. He found joy in the act of creating rather than in the outcome. As he did this, Theo also learned the importance of self-compassion. He had been so hard on himself for not achieving everything he thought he should have. But he realized that happiness was not about perfection. It was about accepting himself, flaws and all. He stopped comparing himself to other artists and began to appreciate his unique style and perspective. One day, while working in his studio, Theo had a breakthrough. He stood back from his canvas, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. For the first time in a long time, he realized the happiness wasn't something to be found in external accomplishments. It was something that came from within, from embracing who he was and finding joy in the present moment. As Theo continued his journey toward the art of happiness, he began to notice subtle changes in his life. His relationships with others became more meaningful. He reconnected with old friends and made new ones who shared his values. He began to surround himself with people who supported his growth and shared his passion for life. Theo also started giving back to his community. He began teaching art classes to young aspiring artists, sharing not only his technical skills but also his newfound wisdom about the importance of inner happiness. He encouraged his students to focus on the joy of creating rather than the pressure of achieving perfection or seeking approval. He taught them that true happiness came from expressing themselves freely and embracing their unique voices. As Theo's life transformed, so did his art. His paintings began to reflect the deep sense of peace and contentment he had found. They were no longer just landscapes or portraits, they were expressions of his soul. His work resonated with people in a way it never had before. Viewers connected with the emotions he conveyed on the canvas, and Theo realized that his art had a new purpose: to inspire others to find their own happiness. One evening, after a successful art show where his work was celebrated by both critics and fans, Theo sat alone in his studio, reflecting on how far he had come. He smiled to himself, knowing that happiness wasn't a destination, it was a lifelong journey. And the art of happiness wasn't about striving for perfection. It was about embracing the beauty of each moment, accepting oneself, and finding joy in the simplest of things. Moral 1. Happiness comes from within. True happiness is not something you can acquire. It's cultivated through gratitude, self-acceptance, and embracing the present moment. 2. Create for yourself, not for others. Finding fulfillment in the process, not the outcome, is key to living joyful life. 3. Let go of perfection. Happiness isn't about being perfect. It's about being authentic and embracing your imperfections. 4. Gratitude shifts perspective. Focusing on what you have rather than what you lack can lead to a deeper sense of contentment. 5. Give back to others. Sharing your gifts with others and helping them on their own journey can bring fulfillment and purpose to your life. Part 2. As Theo embraced his newfound understanding of happiness, the change in his life began to ripple outward. He continued to practice gratitude every morning, but now it felt different. Each day, his appreciation grew deeper, more genuine, and more grounded. the world seemed to open up in a way that it never had before. What had once felt like an overwhelming, busy life now felt full of possibilities. Theo's art, too, began to take on a new form. He realized that the canvas wasn't just a place for his technical skills. It was a mirror of his soul, an expression of his inner peace and the quiet joy that now defined his life. He spent days exploring any techniques, pushing his creativity to new heights, but with no pressure to meet any expectations other than his own. He'd set up his easel by the window, letting the morning light flood each room, and allowed the strokes of paint to flow naturally, without force or expectation. What started as small changes in his daily routine gradually transformed the way he saw his work and himself. When Theo entered the studio, he felt a connection to his surroundings, the colors and the textures. For the first time in his life, he was no simply painting for the approval of others. He was painting to express himself, and in doing so, he found an unexpected sense of satisfaction. One morning, as he stood in front of a canvas he had just begun, Theo found himself reminiscing about his early days in the art world. He had once been consumed by the need to be the best, to outshine everyone around him. But now, looking back, he realized that it wasn't about being the best artist. It was about being true to himself. He didn't need to chase recognition. He could find happiness in the simple act of creating something that felt meaningful to him. Around this time, Theo started connecting more deeply with his friends and family. He had always been somewhat distant, absorbed in his work, but now he felt a greater sense of presence when he spent time with them. He listened more attentively, laughed more freely, and found himself cherishing the little moments like a conversation over a cup of coffee or an afternoon walk with his sister, Maria. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Theo's apartment, looking out over the city, Maria remarked, "You seem different lately. It's like you're glowing." Theo smiled and took a deep breath. "I think I'm finally starting to understand something. I've spent so many years running after things I thought would make me happy. Awards, recognition, praise. But I've come to realize that happiness doesn't come from what you get. It comes from what you give to yourself. It comes from accepting yourself, flaws and all." Maria nodded thoughtfully. "You've been so hard on yourself for so long. I'm glad to see you finally let go of that pressure." Theo leaned back, feeling the weight of his sister's words. "It's a process," he admitted. "I'm still learning, but I'm not in a rush anymore." That evening, Theo found himself reflecting on the lessons he had learned. He realized that true happiness wasn't something you could achieve in the future. It wasn't about waiting for the perfect moment, the right circumstances, or the big success. It was about choosing to be present in the moment, to find joy in what was already here, and to embrace the journey, not just the destination. A few weeks later, Theo's art started receiving attention again. But this time, it wasn't the attention he'd been seeking for years. It wasn't about his paintings being sold for large sums or winning prestigious awards. It was about the way people responded to his work. They saw something in his paintings, something raw and genuine. His art had a new energy, a new depth to it that hadn't been there before. One evening, Theo stood in front of a painting he had recently finished. It was a portrait of a woman, her eyes filled with emotion, her posture relaxed and content. Theo had painted her with the same quiet confidence he had begun to find in him. The colors were soft, the strokes subtle. It wasn't a perfect painting, but to him, it was exactly what he had wanted to create. As Theo stared at the canvas, he realized something profound. The art of happiness wasn't about achieving perfection in life or in his work. It was about embracing the imperfections and letting go of the need to control everything. It was about allowing things to unfold naturally and appreciating the beauty in the process, not just the end result. In that moment, Theo knew that he had found something more valuable than any recognition or accolade. He had found peace within himself. Theo's journey into the art of happiness continued to evolve, and with each passing day, he felt more deeply connected to the present moment. He learned to enjoy the little things, the simple joys that had once been overlooked in his pursuit of success. A cup of tea in the morning sun, the rustle of leaves in the wind, a walk through the park with a friend. These were the moments that now filled him with gratitude. Theo also became more intentional with the relationships in his life. He spent time with those who shared his values and supported his growth. He learned to set boundaries and let go of toxic relationships, understanding that surrounding himself with positivity and love was essential to his happiness. One day, Theo decided to visit an art museum that had always been on his list, but he had never taken the time to visit. As he walked through the galleries, surrounded by works of art from masters who had influenced him over the years, he felt a profound sense of connection. He realized that art, like happiness, was a journey, one that was never about reaching a specific point, but about embracing the process of creation, expression, and growth. Theo smiled to himself as he wandered from one painting to the next, feeling a deep sense of peace. The art of happiness, he knew now, wasn't a secret to be discovered, it was a practice to be lived each and every day. As he left the museum, the sun setting behind him, Theo felt a wave of contentment wash over him. His life had changed in ways he hadn't expected, but it had also become richer, fuller, and more meaningful. He had learned that happiness wasn't a pursuit, it was a choice. And in choosing to embrace himself, his art, and the world around him, Theo had unlocked the key to living a life of true fulfillment. Moral 1. Happiness is a choice. Happiness isn't something you achieve, it's something you create within yourself by appreciating the present and embracing the process of life. 2. Let go of perfection. True happiness doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from accepting your imperfections and finding beauty in them. 3. Gratitude shifts perspective. Practicing gratitude allows you to find joy in the simplest moments and helps you appreciate what you already have. 4. Happiness is a journey. Life is about the process, not the destination. Embrace each step and enjoy the ride. 5. Surround yourself with positivity. The people you surround yourself with have a significant impact on you. Happiness. Choose to spend time with those who lift you up. Part 3. Theo's understanding of happiness grew deeper as time passed. He continued to embrace the practices he had learned: gratitude, mindfulness, and being present. Each day felt like a new opportunity to reinforce his commitment to living a life full of meaning. But just when he thought he had everything figured life threw another curveball, reminding him that happiness isn't always a straight path. One afternoon, as Theo was walking through a bustling park, near his apartment, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his agent. "Hey, Theo, there's an exhibition opportunity that just came up. They're looking for artists to showcase their work. It's a big deal, lots of exposure, but they need your pieces by next week. What do you think?" Theo paused for a moment. It was a tempting offer, exactly the kind of recognition he had always desired. But as he read the message again, he remembered something. Was this the kind of success he really wanted? Or was it just another attempt to validate his self-worth through external approval? Theo had been down that road before, chasing accolades and achievements in the hope that they would finally bring high happiness. He had learned that lasting fulfillment came from within, not from the applause of others. He continued walking, lost in thought, but as he passed a group of children playing on the grass, he felt something stir inside of him. He realized that the work he had done to reach this point was not just about his art or his success. It was about cultivating a deep sense of fulfillment from his own life. Success could be part of that, but it couldn't define I. Later that evening, as he sat in his studio, Theo reflected on high decision. He thought about the joy he had found in painting just for the love of it, without any expectation. The paintings he'd been creating lately were a true reflection of who he was free from pressure, judgment, or the need for approval. The purest version of himself was coming through in his work, and that felt more rewarding than any gallery show could. He took out his phone again, typed out a quick reply to his agent. "Thank you for thinking of me, but I think I need to pass on this one. I'm focusing on creating art that is true to myself, not for exposure or recognition." It was a simple choice, but it felt empowering. For the first time, Theo realized that happiness was about making decisions that aligned with his values, not what others expected from him. The world might continue to chase after external validation, but he had learned that real peace came from following his own heart. The next morning, Theo decided to take a break from the studio. He was no longer chasing after the next big thing. Instead, he would embrace the present and explore other passions that had been calling to him. As he sat in the park later that day, reading a book, he saw the same group of children playing again. They were laughing, completely in the moment, completely free. They weren't worried about the future or comparing themselves to anyone else. They were simply enjoying life. It reminded Theo that this was the essence of happiness, to be fully present and engaged in what you love. Whether it's painting, spending time with loved ones, or simply enjoying a quiet afternoon, happiness was about finding joy in the her. And now, as the weeks passed, Theo's approach to life continued to shift. He learned to balance his creative passions with his personal life. He made more time to be with his family and friends, and he noticed how much lighter he felt. In those moments of connection, he no longer sought validation from the outside world. He was enough just as he was. He also started giving back in small ways, volunteering at local art schools to mentor young artists. It wasn't about gaining recognition. It was about sharing his knowledge and experiences with others, helping them find their own path to happiness and fulfillment. One day, Theo was sitting with his friend Carl, who had been one of his earliest supporters when he first started his AR career. Carl had always admired Theo's work, but today, he noticed something different about him. "You seem different," Carl said as they sipped coffee at a local cafe. "It's like you found something that was missing. You look more at peace." Theo smiled. "I think I have. It's not about what I can achieve anymore. It's about who I am and the way I'm living my life. About doing things that make me happy, whether anyone else notices or not." Carl nodded, clearly impressed. "That's a huge shift. I'm proud of you, man. It's like you've found your own version of happiness." Theo chuckled. "I guess I have. It's been a journey, but I finall realized that happiness is not something I have to chase. It's something I have to create. And that starts with embracing myself fully and living authentically." That evening, as Theo sat in his studio, looking at his latest painting, a landscape of the city he had come to love, he reflected on how far he had come. His work was no lunge about striving for perfection or seeking recognition. It was a reflection of his journey, his growth, and his understanding of happiness. Theo had found something more valuable than success. He had found inner peace, and as he stood in front of the canvas, he realized that this was the true art of happiness, not just creating something beautiful, but living a life that felt truly fulfilling. Moral 1. Happiness is found within. True happiness isn't about external success. It's about cultivating inner peace and joy through self-acceptance and living authentically. 2. Make choices aligned with your values. The decisions you make should reflect your true desires, not expectations of others. 3. Be present in the moment. Happiness is found in the present, not in the future. Enjoy the small moments and let go of the need for constant achievement. 4. Let go of perfection. Life and art are about embracing imperfections and finding beauty in the process, rather than striving for perfection. 5. Share your joy with others. Happiness grows when you share your passions, knowledge, and love with those around you. Helping others is a powerful way to enrich your own life. Part 4. As months passed, Theo continued to embrace his newfound understanding of happiness. His life had become more balanced, and the weight of expectations no longer dominated his every thought. He had become more involved in his community, not for recognition or rewards, but because he genuinely wanted to give back. Whether it was mentoring young artists at local schools or spending afternoons volunteering at shelters, Theo found great joy in making a positive impact on others' lives. Yet, even with all this newfound peace, Theo knew the journey wasn't always going to be easy. Life has a way of throwing challenges at you when you least expect it, and the true test of happiness is how you respond during those tough times. One day, Theo received an unexpected message. It was from his old gallery manager, Sarah, who had once been instrumental in getting his paintings into prestigious exhibitions. She had a proposal that caught Theo off guard. "Hey Theo, I know it's been a while, but I have a great opportunity for you. There's a major exhibition coming up next month, and the organizers want to feature some of your work. It's going to be highly publicized, and they've agreed to give you a substantial commission for your pieces." First, Theo hesitated. The offer seemed perfect on paper: prestige, exposure, and financial reward. But as he read th message again, a familiar feeling washed over him. Was he tempted by the offer because he truly wanted it, or was he seeking external validation once again? His mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. For so long, he craved success in the form of public recognition and professional acclaim. But after all he had learned about happiness, Theo wasn't sure if this was the right move. The exhibition would take him back into the whirlwind of deadlines, high expectations, and the pressure to create art that appealed to others, not just himself. He needed time to think. For the next few days, Theo avoided rushing into a decision. Instead, he spent his mornings at the park, reading and reflecting. He began journaling again, jotting down his thought and feelings, hoping that doing so would give him clarity. One afternoon, as he sat by the lake, his good friend Carl joined him. Carl had been a constant in Theo's life, supporting him through both highs and lows. "What's going on?" Carl asked as he noticed the distant look in Theo's eyes. "I got an offer for an exhibition," Theo replied, looking down at his journal. "But I'm not sure if it's the right move. Feels like I'm going back to the things I wanted to escape from, the pressure to prove myself." Carl smiled and nodded. "I get it, but I think you've learned so much about yourself and what truly makes you happy. The question is, does this exhibition align with your values now? Is it about creating art for you, or is it about external validation?" Again, Theo sighed. "I don't know. I keep wondering if I'm making the right choice. I feel like the temptation of recognition is still there." Carl leaned back, looking out at the water. "The thing is, Theo, we're all going to be tempted by external rewards. But the true test is how we react when faced with those choices. Do you want your art to be about recognition? Or do you want it to be about you? You've created so much peace in your life by following your heart, not the opinions of others. Don't let this one moment undo all that growth." Theo took a deep breath, considering Carl's words. The moment of clarity he had been waiting for arrived. He realized that his happiness was no longer tied to the validation of others, or to fleeting moments of success. It was about staying true to himself whether or not anyone else noticed. With renewed conviction, Theo replied, "You're right. It's about staying true to myself. This exhibition may be a great opportunity for exposure, but it won't define me. I don't want to return to a place where I'm seeking validation through others. I've worked too hard to find peace in my art and in my life. I'll pass on the exhibition." Carl smiled, proud of his friend. "I think that's the right choice. You've learned so much, and I'm glad to see you putting your happiness first." Theo felt a deep sense of relief after making the decision. Wasn't about turning down opportunities, it was about refusing to compromise his happiness and his growth. As he sat by the water, the sun setting behind him, he realized that happiness isn't found in what we achieve or in what others think of us. Found in the quiet moments when we choose to follow our own path, regardless of where it may lead. In the weeks that followed, Theo's life continued to evolve. He remained dedicated to his art, focusing on creating for the sheer joy of it. He also continued to mentor young artists, sharing his experiences and helping them navigate their own journeys of self-discovery. Theo found immense satisfaction in these acts of kindness, knowing that the impact he made was far more fulfilling than any exhibition or accolade. One evening, as he was finishing a new painting, his most personal one yet, he thought about how far he had come. His journey had been filled with ups and downs, but he had understood the art of happiness. It wasn't about chasing external success. It was about being at peace with who you are and embracing the present. Theo had learned that happiness isn't a destination. It's a way of living. It's the art of accepting yourself, loving your journey, and finding contentment in the small, meaningful moment. And as Theo looked at his finished painting, he smiled, knowing that this was the true masterpiece he had been working on all along his life. Moral 1. Stay true to yourself. Happiness is about following your own path, not seeking external validation or approval. Make decisions that align with your values. 2. Let go of external expectations. True fulfillment comes from within, not from achievements or recognition. Focus on what makes you genuinely happy. 3. Find peace in the present. Happiness is not a destination or an outcome, it's a way of living. Appreciate the present moment and embrace the process of growth. 4. Balance success with self-worth. Achievements can be rewarding, but they shouldn't define your worth. Learn to appreciate yourself beyond your accomplishments. 5. Give back and make a difference. True happiness grows when you share your gifts and help others along the way. Theo had reached a new chapter in his life, one where the external pressures and constant pursuit of recognition no longer had the power to dictate his happiness. The satisfaction he now found in the quiet act of creating, mentoring, and living authentically was a reflection of the growth he had nurtured over the years. As the years passed, Theo's art continued to evolve, but his true masterpiece was no longer a painting. It was the life he had created for himself. The lessons he learned about happiness, self-worth, and authenticity guided him through every challenge, allowing him to find peace even in the most difficult moment. In the end, Theo realized that happiness is not something that can be chased or achieved through external means. Something that comes from within, a state of being that allows you to fully embrace who you are and to find contentment every step of your journey. And as he stood before his latest creation, an abstract representation of his own life, he knew that he had found what so many search for: true happiness. Not because of fame, wealth, or external recognition, but because he had learned to live fully in the moment and honor his own path. Theo smiled, knowing that, at last, he had discovered the art of happiness. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. If you liked the story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Take care, and see you next time.